And I want to direct everybody over to take a look at productcoffee.com/now. And there you'll find a resource page for today's session. We always put together a bunch of resources that'll help you out both during and after today's session. And there's a very important piece of that. If you go to productcoffee.com/now, you will see on the right-hand side of the page, there's a list of resources. And in that bright coral color is a link to collaborative notes. And one of the things that we do at Product Coffee is we take notes together. So we don't just take notes for ourselves. This is a collaborative community and a work together community. So we have a Google Doc that everyone has access to that you can jump into. And as you have questions, thoughts, and observations from the session today, you can jot down your notes there. You can ask questions in that document. We can all build on each other's understanding. And those notes will be part of the archive that is available for this specific meetup going forward. It'll be available in our community archive for our free community, no charge, always available, including videos of this session and some of the resources that we thought you might find useful as well. So head over to that and open up that notes document. You can star it and save it in your drive, but it'll also be available on the archive page. Next week, we'll be back at the 7:30 time slot with our monthly product roundtable. And what we're going to dig into next week, Johanna Vanderven, who has been part of Product Coffee since very early on, led one of our early sessions, is going to be leading a roundtable discussions on your first 90 days in a new product management role. So what are the things that you need to lean into and focus in on in your first 90 days as you're taking on a new product or a new role with a new company? So we're going to hear from seasoned veterans who have been through it before and some of the things that they found were really important. We're going to lean in, and then we're going to hear from some folks who are just starting out in new roles and have specific questions about how to prioritize their time and how to lean in to make sure that they're creating impact early on. So really looking forward to that discussion. It's going to be a roundtable discussion, which means everybody here is part of that discussion. And we'll also address other questions that may come up on the call. Whatever topics are important to you on that day, we'll have some great experts here to drop some knowledge bombs and help you through whatever area you're seeking to grow in. So that's next week at 7:30 a.m. and registration will go live for that today. But today, we're going to swing back around to our session for the day, which is around the key to having a successful product migration. And Joel led this session at Product Camp Atlanta just a couple of weeks ago. It was a really popular session. And so I asked him to come to Product Coffee and share that with our audience here, whether people weren't able to attend Product Camp or saw the session and wanted to see it again or wanted to dig in and ask some more questions. So with that being said, I am going to hand the reins over to Joel Plofsky, who is a senior product manager at Equifax and has been there and done that. Welcome, Joel. Thank you for being here today. It's all yours.
It's my pleasure. Let me just share my screen here with y'all. We good there?
Yep.
Okay. So as Jason said, this is a presentation I gave at Product Camp. And let me start out by introducing you to Bob. Bob is a long seasoned product manager, and I'm going to give you a little more information about Bob since I don't have to be held to 30 seconds here. Bob's had success bringing many original products that were innovative to market, right? He's spent many years coming up with ideas, talking to customers, and had a lot of success. And then Bob had this opportunity come upon him with a new company where he was able to come on board and build a new product that was going to build or buy or whatever, a new product that was going to replace the company's existing legacy product, something that had been in place for years, was making tons of revenue, but you know what? Everybody hated it. Everybody wanted something new. That was the consensus, and that's why they brought Bob on board, because he was the superstar who had built all these great, successful products in the past, and he had all this great knowledge, right? He used user observation. He went out and he sat in people's cubes, and he watched them as they did their jobs. He was strategic. He had a whole plan of how he wanted to build out the product. He met with all the key stakeholders. He met with the CEO and the vice presidents. He met with all the managers of the organization. He had this beautiful roadmap that he planned out, and he had this vision of what the product was going to look like. He knew the competitors in the space, right? He knew exactly what was good about them, what wasn't good about them. He even introduced design thinking, where he questioned everything that came, every idea and everything that they were planning on building. And he used agile methodologies. He broke everything down into little pieces. He built segments piece by piece. He got feedback as he went along. He started out by having an MVP to put out into the market right away. And then he had a go-to-market team that made sure that everybody understood the product and why it was so great. And he worked with his sales team to make sure that it was launched and that the sales would be successful. But you know what? After all that, he did everything that he had always done before with original products. His launch failed. And this is going to be an interactive session, so feel free to interrupt me at any time with any questions or any thoughts that you have. But as you're looking through this, can you spot the problem that Bob ran into that caused him to fail? When he launched this new product, what happened was it came out, and the old product, they did a big lift and shift. They brought all the customers over all the users over from the old system into the new system. They started using it, and all of a sudden, everybody hated it. The product that they had gone off of, the legacy system, everybody wanted to go back to the legacy system. And Bob's whole career all of a sudden was thrown into a loop because it wasn't meeting the needs of the users. Any thoughts what potentially was his problem?
I'll jump in here. We had we've got a few comments coming in on the chat, but you can also throw your virtual hand up there in participants or in your participation menu and your reactions menu, and we'll call on if you want to turn your camera on and jump in verbally as well.
I mentioned in the chat, Joel, maybe not getting potential skeptics or leaders across the organization engaged that have a large sphere of influence.
Yeah. Good
And
point.
this is Yemi as well. This is, from what I'm understanding, this is supposed to be for the end users, right? You're moving people over. I felt like at some point that was dropped. Dropped in the sense that you carried the user along from the beginning, but you didn't carry them along through the entire process. So when I said pilot program, there has to be some sort of intense communication and just bringing the user along and having segments. It's one thing to build an MVP. It's another thing to actually have cut out session where people actually understand what you're actually trying to build. So there wasn't really a continuous pilot program through your
sure. So they weren't engaging the users, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Anybody else?
So I'm wondering, if part of the issue is the new system might have been a much better solution for like user experience and for all of those things. But if it didn't match the way the customer was used to doing things and it was too difficult for them to learn the new system, they had, well, I need to do this task. I've gone here to do this task and it's not here. And all of a sudden, it's too much effort to learn the new system.
Yeah, it wasn't intuitive enough, right? They were used to a certain way of doing something, and then all of a sudden it's not the same. That's a good point. Anybody else?
Just to build on that, I did this project, by the way, so I have deep scar tissue on this issue. I don't know how you knew, but yeah, people will hold on to what they know fiercely. And you can deliver platinum experience. But if they've been using a legacy system for 20 years, there's going to be all kinds of baggage. That's a bad word. There's also all kinds of institutional memory and capital in that old solution. And you come in and then you drop a new solution in, and like I said, it could be platinum, but it's scary. You know, what happened to this button, and how do I run my whatever, my reports, my batch jobs, and what have you. So yeah, that's what I saw missing here.
Yeah, that's a good one. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I'm going to build off what Jerry said, because he's pretty aligned with what I'm thinking here, which is not just where'd my button go and it's somewhere else, or how do I run reports and I just need to go to that section of the product. What if I didn't build that button or those reports?
Yeah.
Right. And that's the MVP, right? The MVP was really designed, and we can get into semantics here. We could argue for hours whether MVP is right here or not. But in my opinion, the MVP was really designed for, the whole concept was designed for an original product so that you could get something out lightning fast, and so that you can determine repeatedly whether you want to pivot or persist, right? And when you're replacing a legacy system, there's no pivot, right? Your version one, you have to persevere. Sorry, you need to persevere and deliver that version one of the product to replace the old product. And if you use the MVP methodology, the minimum viable product concept, basically you're just getting something out there that someone will be able to use so they can give you feedback. And the feedback they're going to give you is your new product sucks, right? Because for some reason or another, something you didn't build that didn't meet your MVP is not in there, right? And so when you're going to a new product and you're taking people off the legacy system, it's not sufficient to have a minimum viable product. You need to have a minimum acceptable product. You need to have a new paradigm for your users or for what you're building. So now we have the map. I'm coining a new phrase or new acronym. And how do we build a minimum acceptable product? Minimally acceptable product. The first is user observation. User observation is key in basically everything product management wise or customer experience wise. And sit down and watch people using the legacy product and ask lots of good questions. Why do you do that? How does that benefit you? What process does this fill? What are there regulations that are causing you to do this? Figure out how many languages that are being used, how many different currencies are being used, what kind of systems are migrating with that product, what gets pre-filled, all the things that they're doing with the product. They're basically trying to do their job, right? They're using that tool to do their job, and everything that's in there potentially is helping them do their job. And anything that we choose to take out of that is probably going to stop them from doing something with their job. So that involves gathering all the requirements. And so basically the way I see it is everything in that legacy product is a requirement until it isn't a requirement, right? So step one is find out what all the requirements are. If there's something that you feel nobody uses, it's useless, we don't need it, then try to go through a process of making it no longer a requirement. But until then, it's a requirement. And here's the second really important point. Anything not in the legacy product is not a requirement until it's a requirement. And this is, I think, where we all get tripped up, right? As product managers, we are taught to be empathetic, right? To think about how our users or our customers are suffering and how we can ease their pain, right? And when we go out and we watch them and we listen to them, what are they going to tell us when we're sitting and watching them use the old legacy system? They're going to say, here, you want to see how much this sucks? Watch this. Look, see how I have to go through 20 clicks, right? This sucks because look how terrible these graphics are, right? This looks like it's from the 1970s, if there were such a thing in the 1970s, right? And what do? In our mind, we think, oh, I totally feel their pain. I'm going to help them. I'm going to be the hero. I'm going to deliver a solution with unbelievable graphics. I'm going to deliver a solution that with less clicks. I'm going to deliver it right. I'm going to solve all their problems. But those aren't requirements of the initial product. Yeah, we might want to have great graphics. That's certainly a great thing to have in our product. We might want to have artificial intelligence. We might want to have, automation. Those are all great things in the product, and we might want to build those in, but we may not want to build them into version 1 because version 1, we may have too much stuff that's a requirement from the old system to get in there. But we get tripped up into thinking we want to ease their pain. We want to solve their problem. We want to be the hero. And we end up delivering a product that we think is so incredible that they're just going to love it because it has all the things that they complained about. And yet it doesn't have the things that they didn't even talk about that are requirements for them to do their job, because they're never going to point that stuff out, right? So what I would recommend is, first of all, don't believe anyone who tells you we don't need that. Nobody uses that. I don't even know why they built that in the first place. If you believe that, it will always come back to bite you. If there is such a thing as a feature that isn't required, that you think isn't required, you start to get feedback that it's not required. Have a formal process where requirements that are not needed in the minimal acceptable product can be removed via sign-off. And someone mentioned this in the product camp session, the higher up the person is who verbally tells you you don't need it, believe it even less, right? Have a formal process to make sure that everybody signs off, okay, we're not going to need that. And as you start to budget or estimate what it's going to take to deliver on your initial solution, your version 1, that's when you'll be able to pull things out, because those are the things that they may not want to pay for, or they may not want to wait for, that you can pull out. And if you do it that way, now you set yourself up for, this was agreed upon. We decided to go that way. Everybody knows this is the product that we're delivering on, and the better you communicate that, the better off you are. And then, if you're building a new product, or you're going to a new product, be as agile as you can so that you can get that feedback loop going. Even though you may not be putting users on the system, or maybe you have some way of letting them test the new system, make sure that what you're building, you don't want to go back to the old waterfall method of you go into a cave and build something for 6 months and say, ta-da, this is it. This is a new system. You still need to be chunking your work and building features and getting feedback and going through the process. And then don't release less than the minimum acceptable product. What will happen almost always is, as the time is going on, the pressure will build to release. And when you get in that situation, that's again when you want to negotiate. Okay, I can release, but this is what won't be in there. So if it's reports and everybody's okay not having the reports until version 2, fine, then that's something that you can go with. If it's whatever it is, make sure that there's a formal process where you that negotiation is planned and discussed. And then try to lower your risk, to do everything you can to de-risk the situation. If there's a small group of users that you can start with, maybe they have a more simplistic model that you can start with. So you have a product that isn't all the bells and whistles. So as you've gone out and you've observed users and talked to users in different groups, maybe there's one group of users that only uses the system for a few things. Maybe that's a good place to start your rollout so that you can get them going on the new system before you have features built for some of the other groups of users. Another one is to avoid the lift and shift if possible, where you have it planned where one weekend you just shut down the old system, you take all the users and you create accounts for the users in the new system, and then all those users come in to work Monday morning, and when they turn on their computers, they click the link and it takes them to the new system. Where 100% of the users are going from the legacy system to the new system overnight, the more that you have that scenario, the more risk you have involved. So for example, one of the things that we had a situation where we built a new product from an old product, and basically a decision was made early on that I fought heavily for, which was to use the same database for both systems, so that both systems would hit off the original legacy database. And so then we built the web services on top of that database for both systems to work off of. And then we built some features or some parts of the product that we thought were really interesting and really some things that were new and on top of the old system into the new product, and then made it so that users could go to both products from the same landing page. That allowed them to work concurrently between the two products and use the new system just to get some of those better workflows or better ways of doing things. And we pulled them over to the new system instead of pushing them over to the new system, and that worked out really well. And they were basically be able to toggle between the two systems. So when they had something that they needed to do, their general work, they would do it in the old system. Some of the newer features, they do it in the new system. So basically, this is my spiel on Succeed, where so many others, like Bob, have failed. Any questions or thoughts? Okay.
So I'll jump in. Thanks, Joel. I've got there's some great insights and perspectives and experiences here to kind of to lean into. One of the things that I was thinking about as you were kind of cautioning people against the lift and shift, especially, and the staying as agile as possible. One of the things that, if you go back to some of the agile tenets, and that I'm interested in how you reconcile, is the notion of, so often what happens in an MVP thinking versus an MAP thinking is people think about, okay, what is the smallest piece of functionality that I can test, that I can get out there, and that's okay for experimentation, but not for a product launch. One of the things that I've seen a lot of conversation about is approaching these types of migrations and platform redesigns and rebuilds with what's called a strangler pattern, where you essentially take a use case and you build that on the new platform, and then you deprecate it in the old environment and make it and shift people over to that. And that can work a little bit better with that parallel where you've got some things happening on an old platform and some things happening on a new platform. So you're kind of forcing that migration over time. But where you can run into trouble is when you get back to the agile analogy that leans on a slice of cake. I can take a big, thick slice of cake, and that's a delicious, tasty dessert. If I cut the bottom third off of that slice of cake, I've got a piece of not quite as an enjoyable dessert because it doesn't have all of the flavors and all of the experience in it, but it's putting something in my belly, but it's not nearly as satisfying as taking a thinner slice of that cake from the top to the bottom, where maybe I don't get as much, but I still get a full flavor experience. So some satisfaction. And properly executing that strangler approach requires really digging in and thinking on the jobs that your customer's trying to accomplish, so that when you roll out a capability in the new environment, they can actually go end to end and accomplish something completely. Your example of leaving reports out is a great example to me of, as long as I can get that reporting data somewhere, okay, but I need to have a really clearly defined path of how I'm going to complete my use case, complete my job to be done in a robust way using the new, better experience, as well as filling in gaps with the old experience. So I'm not left hanging out to dry. And I think that's where you get into that rebellion that you're talking about, is all of a sudden I can't accomplish everything I could before. I need to have a really clear path to accomplishing everything and then some.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the cake example is perfect, and the jobs to be done is probably the way to think about it, right? If at the end of the day, these are people who have jobs to be done, and if we give them a way to do their jobs across the board, they have 100%. They can still do 100% of their jobs from beginning to end of the whole migration process. Then and as we're going, we're giving them better ways to do their job in the new product. They're going to want to move over to the new product more and more. So it's that de-risking of making sure that,
Yep.
that we're in touch with our user base and making sure that they agree that they can still do all their jobs throughout that process, kind of planning it out in advance and coming up with a scheme, whatever that scheme is, for us to get them from one side. It's like that that problem, if you have 7 people on one side of the river and one boat, and you have to get all the 7 people from one side of the river to the other, but you're only allowed to go so many times and have so many people in the boat. It's kind of like that analogy when you're trying to get everybody from one system to the other system, and you're building pieces here and there and trying to get them over and trying to figure out how can we do this so that at the end of the day we have this huge success story to tell, even though we didn't disrupt anything along the way, right?
Yep. I see Melanie's had some commentary with some relevant experience. I don't know if you're able to jump on or not, but I see Christine's got her hand up. So Christine, what do you got?
Yes. So first of all, this is incredible. Thank you so much. A lot to think about, and I would love you all's feedback for this. So with our situation, we are actually doing a major migration, and it's the precursor to a brand new launch. So we took a legacy, completely revamped it, just introduced it. We did a very light launch because we're still kind of adding features and things like that. And then later this year, we're doing a big launch, and it's one of the forerunner software. So my question is for all of you guys who've had migration experience, we have over 1,000 clients on our legacy product, and we're wanting to, of course, invite them to shift over. So I guess my question is 2-part. One, obviously we don't want to just dump them into the new software, sunset the old, and create all that confusion. So earlier, avoid the lift and shift. How long would you suggest the running parallel time so it doesn't keep extending longer? And then my other question is, any insight to just best practices for migrating a lot of people?
Really, nobody. So I've experienced this multiple fold. We've migrated from a client server network setup where the server is actually physically in our client's location. So I don't know the real scenario with you guys, but the way we ended up doing it was we took the ones that we found the people that really wanted to move over, right? They thought that was a good thing, and we worked with those folks first. Those are the most apt people to migrate over first. You learn a lot from that process, and then we would then gradually write up a plan and see if we can get everyone over in a certain time frame. In our situation, we had a deadline, so we were kind of somewhat forced to get everybody off, and they were kind of also incentivized to get it, because if they were not on the new platform, they wouldn't get the incentives either as well. So maybe a little bit different in your scenario, but that has worked well for us. It's never worked well when we just took everybody over from one to the other and said, hey, go for it, because it's just too many problems. We're doing something of that in our identity access management right now, but we're really doing that very slow and slow and small. So we're taking 5 locations, and we called them up. We said, hey, this is what we're working on. Are you guys interested? And if they say no, we don't talk to them. We just back off. We find another location that will work with us, and then work with them and trying to get that launched. Now, I'm assuming also that we have things that we can do, feature, flags where we can turn things off and off for certain customers as well. But that may not be your situation. We've had a customer down for 3 weeks flat, and that was not good. Very large location, couldn't get the data migrated over the weekend from the legacy system over to the new one, and that was torture. But that lesson learned was to have dry runs in that situation prior to, during the day, and then test it out before we moved it over. And every client was different for us because they had their own database with their own custom configs, so we had to accommodate for each one. I don't know if that helps, but
yes. I was looking for the hand raising button, but I couldn't find it. So if it's okay, I can put in my 2 cents. I'm not sure who spoke just now, but I definitely would love to add to that as well. So from a digital workplace experience, we're talking about Microsoft technology from server side to on-prem. And I can talk from one of a recent experience that we had. So just like the last individual mentioned, you want to first of all identify the people that are willing to move over, right? So typically we'll call that phase 0 individuals. So those people help build the story, get the excitement going from hey, this is not so bad after all. We can use them as success story as we're going through the rest. And also because we had a timeline that we had to adhere to. So from things that we did for the other individuals that we needed to move over to the new O365 environment, or let me call it M365 environment, we literally had to break things down into phases. So move people by phases, and that phase could be a month, it could be 2 months, but then just kind of ensure that communication is intact throughout the entire phase. From this, okay, so these individuals are going to go in this phase because they're ready to migrate. What does communication look like with them? What training happens in parallel? Like, what is the handoff experience? And then move to the next phase and to the next phase until we literally got everyone onboarded, and then we had the big now we're live, because everyone has had the chance and the time to actually go through their own phase, experience the solution, take a lot of lesson learned, move it to the next one, and so on and so forth. One of the things from a digital workplace experience, when you're talking about some of the application that exists, we're looking at old technologies and moving them into the new technology. So the business really had to also communicate what to expect when we're talking about, and sorry to be a little bit technical here, when we're talking about info platforms and converting them into Power Apps and SharePoint designers and converting them into, Power Automate, what does that look like? What is the new experience going to look like? So there was a lot of training session, a lot of tips and tricks that goes through the entire process from communication perspective. So there's a lot of planning that needs to happen. And then after that planning, then you go through the project in a phased manner where people actually, you gauge people's readiness, and you just don't switch overnight. Like I said earlier, you actually going through segments. So everybody had the chance to be able to touch and feel and apply your lessons learned through it before you then say, okay, now we're live, since everyone has gotten a chance to use the technology, get a feel of it. And not everybody's going to be happy, but at least, you got majority wins over. So yeah, that's the other thing I was going to add.
I really like the idea that you both brought up of having early adopters, the people who really want to try the new product. And I never thought about that. I mean, I always think of early adopters as being for innovative products, people who want, but I could see where that is equally adaptable to migrations.
Yes. Yeah, thank you all for your wisdom. I took notes. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, Melanie, you've got your hand up. Why don't you jump in here?
Sure. So I had to do my migration, all at once. I didn't have a choice because we're working with DMV and they changed their back end for our system. But I've seen others where people were able to do like a phase migration, which that looked lovely, but we didn't have that option. But one of the things that we did do was the same kind of thing where we had, the early adopters who were kind of beta testing as much as possible. So they were the people we were showing things to and that kind of thing. But the thing that I would say, talking about taking a phased approach is to make sure that you do set some kind of deadline, because you will end up having people who don't want to switch. And at some point you kind of have to force them to, and make it so that you're not supporting two systems, because the more releases you do and you're doing them in both places, the more engineering resources you're wasting doing something in a legacy system that's not going to exist. So I would say it depends on your product, but I would really look at like when you're planning on doing changes that you have to do across both, and trying to have your legacy system sunset before you have to do any of that, because that's a huge, waste. The other thing that I found really, really helpful was just after the launch, tons and tons of communication with customers. So we had a daily Q&A session, and I actually was on there with my training team answering questions from all of our customers, and just sort of providing that, like, we care that you had to get dumped into a new system. It was really, really beneficial because, first of all, I got access to my frustrated customers and understood what was going on with them. And second of all, they felt like they had more support than just, the training materials that we had created. They had somebody they could ask questions to. And, it kind of was like being in the front lines together. So if you can do something like that, that was super helpful too, to just have that user research after the migration was complete to see how things were going.
And that probably keeps you from being blindsided where people are unhappy and you don't know it, right?
Well, everyone was unhappy because it was, 4th of July weekend, and it was terrible. But I mean, you do the best that you can, because sometimes you don't have a choice.
One of the things you said there, Melanie, actually made me think of getting back to the crossing the chasm kind of concept, because even when you're doing a migration or launching a new platform or a new product to an existing customer base, especially when you're taking that voluntary approach where you're letting people somewhat migrate at their own pace for a while, letting them run in parallel, like Joel recommends, at some point, your early adopters are going to jump in there pretty quickly, and then you're going to have your early majority. At what point do you force people to cross the chasm? It's like, how do you design the confidence into your transition and move them? We dealt with something similar at IBM when we were an acoustic, when we were redeploying our whole platform onto, we had built our entire marketing automation platform on our own hardware. We were running our own data centers, and we wanted to move to the Amazon cloud. And we had a lot of reticence of customers to make that move. And that was one where we had no choice but to take massive groups of customers and just move them over. But they were it was a lift and shift technologically. It was more about winning their hearts and minds, because they were getting the exact same functionality. They were just scared of the transition. We also had a new interface for managing your files, and the early adopters got in there, identified some missing use cases that were critical to their success. We closed those gaps, and then we had 60% of our audience who just didn't want to move because they didn't want to learn to do things a new way. And we had to make the decision at some point to say, okay, I hear you. Here's the transition perspective, but we're not going to run these two in parallel anymore. We're moving everybody on such and such a date. And we had a few extreme cases where people really pushed back, and we gave them a few extra weeks. But there's certainly a competing mindset of, how long, to your point, Melanie, how long do you let them wait to choose? And how do you establish very clear messaging and communications about, you've got a choice up until a point, and then at this point, we have to shut down support for the old system.
Right, I agree. It's a really hard decision to make. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, sometimes you just have to do it even though you don't feel ready.
So,
Jerry. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Jerry. Sorry.
Oh, no, this is going to be quick. I wanted to go back to the, if you have to do a lot of migrations with clients all at once. Joel, you were giving me flashbacks, because everything you said in your presentation, I lived. And I took a project one time to do this, to come in and clean up a botched migration, which was really a big like-for-like situation in the healthcare space, in order to prepare the clients for a new generation of functionality. So in other words, it was a promise for the future, but we need you to do this migration now, because we're building everything in a new way and giving you new functionality. So I did the project I was assigned, and then I asked my contact person, how many more of these are there? And they said 200. And I said, well, you're all gonna commit suicide before you get through 20. If every single one is like the one I just did, and I like to think I'm pretty senior. I've done a lot of projects. And, all the people managing these projects were fairly junior, because that's what they did. Who knows why? Anyway, so what we ended up doing was working with lead clients and developing reusable materials in the way of things like, what are the work steps in the migration that the vendor's going to do and the client's going to do? How do you staff the migration? How does the client team staff up for the migration? What are the best practices for how to get people on the new platform? And this became, a best practice template. And when it was time for the next client to go through their migration, you could hand that to them, and you could say, if you do these things, it will work, and it will be the less risk and the greatest opportunity for success, because you're building on the work of 10, 15, 30 people that have gone before you. But somehow leveraging all that scale to the benefit. And a lot of times, there are, just like there are lead users, there are lead clients that, want to give to the community, even though you might have abused them over the years, and because they feel like, it's going to come back. At some point, somebody will do something that they can use. And, and by doing so, everybody benefits. But that's a nightmarish combinatorics problem when you think about it. When you have hundreds, if not thousands, of installations to migrate, how can you leverage the client community to help you and get scale and de-risk it? Otherwise, you could end up with 2 or 3 or 400 meltdowns, and that's quickly going to consume all the capacity in the company.
Good points.
What other questions or experiences out there do we have?
I have an assignment if you want to do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Hey, can I mention one more? I hate to monopolize.
Yeah.
But I put it in the chat. One of the best practices that saved us, to be honest, in teeing up these 200 migrations was to introduce the concept of a formal user acceptance test on the MAP. And basically the way it worked was we took real users and we made them go through the new solution function by function. And they had to be able to find it and do it with training materials. And then we had a development representative in the session so that if there was a miss, it could be very quickly documented and assessed for remediation. So, and then you get a sign off on the UAT, and then the client can't say that you ignored the fact that you left out 35 features.
That's a great idea.
It saved some lives, to be honest. Nobody hanging from ropes in the break room.
Okay, so the assignment is discuss a failed migration, either that you were involved with or your company was involved with. Figure out what failed, why did it fail, and what would be a better way.
That's a great one. And I would often break us into small breakout groups for that, but I think we've got a small enough group right now still hanging on at the tail end of lunch to not do that. And can I put you on the spot? Because you had some commentary going in chat earlier that I think was really relevant. I don't know if you're still here fully plugged in, but I think it'd be a really great one for you to kind of lean into.
Did you say me?
Yeah.
Yes. So
you can change names to protect the innocent or call them out to punish the guilty, whichever you prefer.
No worries. I just want to say I have my product coffee shirt on. So yay. Okay. Yeah, no problem. I was trying to think of, I think I'll go with and actually I had 2 experiences with this. We were doing a rewrite of of our software product because of Flash. Like I said, I've done this with 2 companies now. And so in doing that, it came with Flash was dying, so there wasn't much option there. We had to do it, right? And then also it came the option of, do you keep everything? Do you kind of take things out? What do you do? And with that, one of my first times through, I came in really towards the end of the rewrite, or what was supposed to be the end. And Dev had decided to take out a lot of functionality that supposedly no one used, and then also add in other stuff that no one asked for. So as product was brought in, and as we were coming in and doing this and getting ready, and we had to do migrate people, because again, they were on Flash, they had to migrate over. So we had just all kinds of, just a number of things going on, right? Pulling them off of Flash onto this whole migration, and then to turn around and find out that, and actually what happened from a product perspective, we didn't know they pulled out these features because they weren't documented. So we were getting people migrated over, like it's great, it's awesome, the new platforms, it's gonna be quick, easy, it's got. Then people start coming back like, well, where is this, where's that? We're like, what are you talking about, where's that? And we go back to the dev, hey, where's that? Oh, we took it out. Why'd you take it out? We didn't think anyone used it. It's like, what? So we ended up spending the whole, from the time we rolled that first kind of, hey, this is good, rewrite out, we ended up spending the entire next 1 year of time getting in just the needed features that they had taken out to begin with. And we ended up losing, I would say, about 2.5 years of development time on that product, trying to rewrite it into Flash and then putting everything back in. 2.5 years in the market. That was, to me, was a huge hit and part of the reason why we weren't able to ever catch up.
Yeah, very similar
just doing
to
it that
what
way.
I've seen. Very similar to what I've seen in so many migrations. Is that
Yep.
Why did you leave it out? Why?
Yeah.
Well, nobody used it, or we didn't.
Yeah.
Someone said that it wasn't that important, or
Yeah.
Whatever.
Exactly. I'll tell you the second one too, guys. We did the same thing. And actually, I'll throw it out, when I was at ADP, we had to rewrite the back end. So the whole administrative piece of the platform. And it was, again, a Flash rewrite. And we had to go in and do that. And that actually, the whole Flash rewrite of that whole talent management system took 3 years. 3 years, and it took about 85% of our resources to do that. I only was in there for the last year of it. I will say we did that one much better. We used Pendo data. We understood what people were using, not using. So we did a much better job. And we were also very conscious of things that we chose to leave out. We documented it and we let the customers know ahead of time, like, you're not going to see this feature. Or we said, you're not going to see this feature for a quarter. Went much, much better. The flip side of that was hard, is trying to tell your clients that you had nothing new coming out for 3 years because you were rewriting something over from Flash. So.
Yeah, I think that's a necessary evil with the decision to migrate.
Absolutely.
Is that it stalls you. It stalls your innovation. And it stalls your, all the things that may not even be innovative, but they're just asks that your customers have had, and that for some reason they thought you were going to build right away, and now you're not building anything right away, right?
Exactly. But I will say, my going into ADP, I had lots of learnings that I was like, I'm not going to do that again. So we were able to implement them the second time around.
That's awesome that you learned from getting burned.
Exactly.
Well, Anne has touched on something that, again, more scar tissue from my project management days. Sometimes the people that market the product are not in the loop on these, for lack of a better term, these like-for-like releases, and they're still pushing, their understanding of the roadmap. And buying, and the salespeople are still saying, buy into our story. We're growing and expanding, and we're on the cutting edge, and things like that. And then, the release announcement comes out, and the client finds out that it's really just, from their point of view, like for like. It might be critically important to the future of the product family, but they're going to do all this work. But no one tells marketing and sales, and they're still out pushing, like, buy into our future. We're a big family. You can submit your requests and they'll be promptly analyzed and scheduled for development and things like that. And as Anne was saying, promptly can easily turn into a couple of years.
Well, Jerry, that is, we all want to believe that our companies don't operate in those kind of silos, but so many of us do. That's a great call out.
Oh,
it's painful. It's a great call out.
And I hate to say this because I love my marketing and sales brothers dearly, but it's more than just head nodding in a meeting. Somehow you need to have mind share around the fact, look, folks, you're just going to have to tell the clients, this is the way it's got to be. because of
Yep.
like in Ann's example, one of the technologies was being sunset. So what are your choices really? You can wait till the thing dies and you can shoot it, through the engine block, or you
Yep.
can go through this and get ready for the future.
That's true.
But that's not a message that marketing and salespeople like to deliver.
That's true. So we are at 12:59, and thank you so much, Jerry. Thank you, everybody. I know, Michael, you had your hand up. We couldn't quite get to you just there, but I want to thank especially Joel. Joel, this was a great session. Thank you so much for taking the time, taking your lunch to come share this perspective with us and leading this conversation. It was great to see you, buddy, and great to see you at Product Camp. So happy to have you as part of this community. And we will be back next week at 7:30 with our roundtable on your first 90 days in a new product role. And that'll be led by Joey Vanderven, Johanna Vanderven, who has been part of the Product Coffee community for a really long time. Thanks everyone for joining, and have a great day. I'll stick around, Mike, if you want to kind of jump in here after we end the stream. We can still kind of continue the conversation for whoever wants to hang on. But thanks.